When people bring up the Panther tank, opinions couldn't be more divided. Some hail it as the finest tank of the Second World War, while others dismiss it as nearly worthless, arguing it caused more harm than good for Germany. Whichever side proves right is for you to decide by the end of this video. One fact, however, is beyond dispute. Its crews endured tremendous hardship. Even though they supposedly had the privilege of operating the most advanced tank of the era, the truth is the men inside were often the greatest reason Panthers were lost, and we're going to show you exactly why. So if your admiration for the Panther tank comes from movies or video games, prepare for some disappointment. Looking at its sloped frontal armor, its powerful Maybach engine, and the deadly punch of its long-barreled 75mm tank killer gun, it's easy to assume the Panther ranks among the best tanks of the war, certainly superior to other mediums. Yet reality tells a different story. The Panther was intended to be a medium tank. Even though the Soviet IS-2, weighing a similar amount, was labeled by Germany as a super heavy, the Panther itself emerged as a panicked answer to the shock of facing the Soviet T-34 and KV-1. These designs had completely outclassed Panzer IIs, IIEs, and early IVs with their stubby guns, at least for a time. But what many forget is that the Panther's development had begun earlier than the Tiger. The shock of Soviet armor only accelerated its appearance. This rush meant that the Panther rolled off the drawing board and into production in record time, bypassing the critical testing phases that most tanks required. Hitler insisted the Panther be ready in time for the Battle of Kursk, no matter the price, and the Germans indeed paid dearly for this decision. The difference between the Panther and Tiger illustrates the issue. The Tiger, though introduced before the Panther, was based on the well-understood Panzer IV concept. By contrast, the Panther was conceived as something entirely new, not a heavy breakthrough tank, but a mobile medium machine to replace aging Panzer IVs. What the Germans did not realize was that this decision might prove catastrophic. For every 5 Panthers they built, they could have manufactured 6 upgraded Panzer IVs ultimately, resulting in 1,000 more tanks that actually worked. But hindsight is always clearer. Rushed into production with minimal testing, the Panther was loaded onto trains and sent eastward. Its debut came during Operation Citadel, the offensive that escalated into the titanic Battle of Kursk. Disaster struck even before they reached combat. 2 Panthers caught fire while being unloaded from rail cars and burned to the ground. Several more burst into flames on the short trip from the railway to the front lines. This glaring flaw, which proper testing could have revealed, would destroy many Panthers throughout their service. The cause was an incomplete fuel burn that left raw gasoline in the exhaust system. The hot pipes would then ignite it, leading to fires that quickly spread throughout the tank. If not extinguished in time, flames engulfed the entire vehicle, an especially deadly prospect in a cramped space filled with fuel and ammunition. Even when fires didn't spread, the Panther had other problems. At night, flames shot from its exhaust, visible for miles. The Maybach petrol engine, reliable in other German heavies, was pushed to 700 horsepower here, paired with a terrible cooling system. Overheating at high RPMs was almost inevitable. To make matters worse, the crews were under-preppered. Most were trained on Panzer IVs, with only a handful of actual combat veterans among them, and almost no live-fire practice. Because the Panther was top secret, photographs and written manuals were forbidden. Crews were forced to memorize everything, which meant they were merely familiar with the tank rather than trained to fight with it. When Operation Citadel began, Panthers advanced on Soviet defenses. Wide, water-filled anti-tank ditches brought them to a halt. Experienced crews turned aside, but inexperienced ones attempted to cross and became stuck. Worse still, they had stumbled into minefields, disabling entire companies before combat had even begun. Soviet artillery then zeroed in on the immobilized tanks, forcing crews to abandon them. Those Panthers that pressed on eventually encountered enemy armor, but not the Soviet machines they expected. Instead, they met American-supplied M3 Lees from Lend-Lease stock. The Panthers destroyed 6 in short order, easily overpowering the outdated designs. Yet even on this first day, 18 Panthers were lost. By the following day, 37 more were gone, including one destroyed by a friendly Panzer IV. Over the course of Kursk, more than 200 Panthers were lost. Shockingly, 130 fell not to enemy action, but to mechanical breakdowns. The most horrifying discovery for Panther crews was that their supposedly revolutionary armor could be pierced from the side by Soviet 14.5 mm anti-tank rifles. These rifles were cheap, plentiful, and accurate. A design flaw left a thin, unsloped strip of armor between the hull and the suspension vulnerable. Hitler himself ordered thicker frontal armor at the expense of the sides and rear. Logical in theory, this unbalanced the tank and made it nose-heavy, causing further issues. Side skirts were eventually added to shield the weak spot, but Panther crews had no answer for the tank's other crippling defects. Reliability was abysmal. The Panther's final drive, the mechanism transferring power to the tracks, was originally tested on 30-ton vehicles. The Panther weighed more than 50 tons fully loaded. Built from cheap, soft materials and often abused by unskilled drivers, the part failed after roughly 100 miles. That's less than the tank's 180-mile fuel range, meaning the final drive would usually break before even 1 tank of fuel was used. When the final drive failed, the Panther was immobile. Replacing it in the field was a nightmare, and spare parts were scarce. In practice, 60% of immobilized Panthers were abandoned, blown up, or set ablaze by their own crews to prevent capture. Even those repaired often broke down again on the way back to the front. The suspension also tormented crews. Like the Tiger, the Panther used overlapping road wheels. On the muddy eastern front, debris lodged between them. If not cleared before nightfall, it froze solid and immobilized the tank. Cleaning the tracks became the dreaded job of the newest crewman, who also had to park the tank on branches to keep it off the frozen ground. The result was catastrophic availability. At any given time, only half of all Panthers in service were actually operational. Shortages of fuel later in the war made things even worse. Despite all this, the Panther could still be deadly in the right hands. Its 75 mm KWK-42 gun, over 5 meters long, had incredible muzzle velocity and excellent armor-piercing ammunition. It could penetrate any Allied tank at ranges exceeding a mile, firing 6 rounds per minute. Many considered it the best anti-tank gun of the entire war. Still, design flaws remained. In some variants, 50 rounds were stored in one spot along the side sponson. A single hit there meant instant destruction for tank and crew alike. On the wide plains of the Eastern Front, when Panthers worked properly and were used well, they inflicted horrific losses on Soviet armor, sometimes functioning better as mobile bunkers than tanks. Many turrets were even mounted on concrete fortifications along the Siegfried and Atlantic walls, up-armored and supplied with ammunition. These Panther turrets proved brutally effective defensive weapons. When the Allies invaded Normandy, around 400 Panthers were deployed. They engaged in fierce tank battles, but struggled in terrain they were never designed for. Normandy's bocage stripped them of the advantage of long-range fire, and the soft ground hindered their movement. While they inflicted severe losses on Shermans and Churchills, they were frequently outflanked by more mobile Allied vehicles. The Sherman Firefly, with its powerful 17-pounder, could now kill the Panther from the front, making engagements a matter of who fired first. By late war, Panther crews fought with dwindling supplies of fuel and ammunition, but one last desperate gamble stands out. During the Battle of the Bulge, 5 Panthers were disguised as American M10 tank destroyers. Their crews added plates to mimic the Wolverine's shape and painted them with U.S. camouflage and markings. The plan was to infiltrate Allied lines and create chaos. Yet suspicion quickly arose, and all 5 impostors were destroyed. In the end, life inside a Panther was brutal. Its crews suffered from fire hazards, mechanical breakdowns, freezing suspensions, fuel shortages, and enemy fire. The Panther may have been a technological marvel on paper, but for those who rode in it, it was as much a curse as it was a weapon. So what's your verdict? Was the Panther truly worth all the trouble?